Chapter 231. Cha-Lumera, Odgrad's mate, could not believe it. The great black male was an undefeated force. No matter what crisis arose, the leader always led the pack to victory. Though Cha-Lumera was not particularly old, she had never seen Odgrad lose. So, she assumed today would be no different. She believed they would crush the rebels and feast on their blood. But reality took a different turn from what she had imagined. The male she loved was nowhere to be seen, and instead, a black star appeared. The creature, with wings like a blizzard, stood beside a diminutive female. Everyone present knew what this meant. Liar Odgrad defeated. The tiny leader, protected by the black slaughterer, shouted. The great Odgrad defeated impossible. Defeated impossible. The other mates lunged, denying the female's words. Even if all the mates joined forces, they could not defeat Odgrad. The black slaughterer that had overpowered Odgrad must be far stronger. Unfortunately, this time, her prediction was correct. One of the white mates exhaled towards the small female. The black slaughterer spread its wings to shield its leader. The mate's attack left no mark on its wings. While it provided cover, the small leader turned around and charged at the mate. The mate, who had been exhaling, tried to dodge at the last moment, but it was too late. The leader pierced through the mate before it could escape. Meanwhile, the black slaughterer moved to capture a young mate who was struggling against two enemies alone. The mate, fighting the slow-moving Snow White Queen with a damaged wing and a small creature using ominous power, had no idea the black slaughterer had appeared. Though originally a mate that enjoyed fighting, it now seemed half-crazed. Like a fledgling intoxicated by blood, it focused solely on attacking the Snow White Queen, Hamort. The young mate managed to get close to the Snow White Queen and grasped Hamort tightly with its forepaws. As it exhaled while pressing its body against hers, Hamort twisted her flexible neck just enough to avoid the force .n/o/bell/b/in.c//om. Despite the failed attack, the young mate did not give up and began gathering its strength again. Danger. Cha-Lumera urgently warned, but she did not listen. The price for ignoring the warning was severe. The black slaughterer appeared behind the young mate like a shadow. Its many arms grabbed the young mate, scattering the force it had gathered around its mouth like snow blown by the wind. Then, Hamort released the energy she had gathered toward the young mate's head. Though not particularly powerful for a Snow White Queen, it was enough to blow off the young mate's head. It hadn't been long since the black slaughterer reappeared, and already 3 had perished. Only then did Cha-Lumera realize. Odgrad's pack had lost the battle against this group. Cha-Lumera glanced at the mate she had been fighting alongside. Sharing the same thoughts, they nodded at each other. Probability of the enemy escaping, 93%. The metal-scented creature riding atop the white compatriot, Nel Germa, emitted waves along with strange noises. It was undoubtedly commanding them to pursue. The two fled with all their might. Cha-Lumera was the fastest here, second only to the small leader. The green compatriots and Nel Germa couldn't keep up with her. The mate fleeing beside her gradually fell behind, but Cha-Lumera didn't care. She had to escape to the stars above, far from home. Up there, they wouldn't be able to follow her. At that moment, a serpent appeared and devoured the lagging mate. Witnessing the mate disappear, leaving only the tip of its tail behind, she felt her heart stop. A colossal serpent was there. With thousands. No, tens of thousands of heads writhing, it was a serpent so massive it covered the sky. The moment she saw the end of the serpent's tail, she recognized its identity. It was a being composed of an unimaginable amount of power. No other compatriot could wield such an awe-inspiring force. Not even the one she loved most, the great Odgrad. The serpent that swallowed the sky flicked its tongue, aiming to devour her. She fled with all her might, just as she had when breaking out of her egg. The serpent closed in behind her, its presence growing closer with every beat of her wings. Cha-Lumera did not want to die. There were still so many things she wanted to do. So many things she wanted to eat. She couldn't die here. As she flew with that thought, a sudden, powerful impact struck her chest. A sharp, intense pain, as if she had been pierced by something small and metallic, drained the strength from her body. That was her last memory. Minus. What the? The white Galagon fleeing from my psychic breath suddenly slowed down. I had no idea why the creature that had been desperately running away a moment ago suddenly seemed to give up on life. Because of that, I couldn't aim properly. After gaining the dragon's heart, the power of my psychic breath exceeded my expectations. Previously, it had taken the form of a refined energy beam, but now it had changed. Perhaps due to the sudden release of massive energy, it resembled more of a blazing inferno. The Horizon of Nightmares must have boosted its power. The Horizon of Nightmares enhances the effects of the unique trait it possesses. Seeing how much the breath's power had increased, it was clear that the dragon's heart was also benefiting from it. Not only does it supply nearly infinite energy, but it also boosts the firepower of psychic attacks. If I acquire a new trait that consumes psychic power in the future, it will likely benefit from the enhanced dragon's heart as well. The power might be about half that of the Divine Spectre. Even if the firepower is slightly weaker, this is much better. Unlike the Divine Spectre, I can fire this repeatedly. This will be great when fighting fleets. It's a shame that I lost the enemy's genetic essence, but I'll count it as a valuable experience. The tentacle I had used to fire the breath drooped, and as I turned my head, Hemort approached me. Her amethyst-like eyes gleamed with interest. She was likely surprised, as she had never seen a psychic breath of such strength before. Blackkin, your strength is very, very impressive. Zzz, how's your body? No issues. The small one, Hemort, helped. Mother of the Sky peeked through the broken horn of Hemort. What was that just now? It was a psychic breath, but why was it so powerful? Zzz, I obtained the dragon's heart. But can that alone make it so strong? Is it because it's combined with the symbol of hunt? Zzz, maybe. I thought so. But that's not the point. You insane amorph. She paused, letting out a short sigh, before bombarding me with a rapid stream of telepathic words. You deliberately delayed your detection to avoid precognition, didn't you? Do you know how much trouble you caused us? Zzz, I would have left the spear behind. How would we know just by you leaving the spear? We had to search the entire area to figure out where the battle would take place. I thought you'd see it once I started fighting anyway. Ugh, I should just stop talking. Her amber eyes, nestled deep within her eye sockets, trembled slightly, reflecting her emotions. This was the first time she had reacted so emotionally since the battle with Muriel. Maybe I went too far. There was no other way to catch Odd Grad. My strategy had worked, after all. But regardless, it was clear that Mother of the Sky was upset by my actions. If she had done something similar, I would have been equally unsettled. Zzz, I'll be more careful next time. She shook her bird-like skull, back and forth. I understand why you did it, but please consider our feelings too. I can handle it, but it's not the same for them. She pointed behind me with her finger. When I turned around, I saw Adha and number 26. Great one, that's cruel, I really hate being abandoned. Hearing her sincere telepathic waves, I found myself at a loss for words. When I remained silent, it approached and scratched the shell of my head with its claw. But I didn't really abandon you. I suppose this was her way of letting me off the hook. I wanted to convey my gratitude, but just then, number 26 sprang up from her head. Bad little one. Really, really bad little one. Number 26 extended its tentacles, growing them to their original size, radiating an intensity I had never seen before. It then smacked me on the head with full force. Ack. The blow was so strong that I thought my neck might snap. A message appeared before my eyes indicating that pain reduction had been activated and a dent formed in the shell of my head. Bad little ones who hurt their family and abandon them deserve punishment. As it spoke, its body turned pale white. The last time I saw it like this was long ago when it was forcibly injected with selenium aboard the Megacorp research ship. My departure had been that much of a shock to it. In the face of its fury, there was only one thing I could say. Zzz, I'm sorry. Did it understand the sincerity in my apology? The tentacle poised to strike again paused mid-air. After a moment, its body gradually returned to its usual pink hue. Shrinking its tentacles, it moved from Adhay's head to mine. Are you going to stop doing bad things now? Zzz, yes. If you do bad things again, I'll punish you. I'll hit you hard. Zzz, okay. It curled the tip of its tentacle into a ball, shaking it as if to emphasize the warning. Mother of the Sky was right. They aren't my slaves, nor are they tools to be used at my convenience. They are beings who move alongside me of their own will. They are truly precious to me. I've lived alone for most of my life, whether in the game or in reality, but not here. The strategy I used this time involved manipulating their emotions. While it yielded the desired outcome, it also hurt them. In the long run, this isn't good. Not for me, and not for them. Odgrad was a peculiar opponent, but there's a good chance I'll face more enemies with foresight abilities in the future. When that happens, I'll reconsider the tactics I used yesterday. I've survived this long by using any means necessary. However, this incident has made me aware of the risks associated with this strategy, so I won't repeat it. Maintaining a positive relationship with them is beneficial to me in the long term. Having heard my apology, number 26 no longer seemed angry. Though it still tapped my horn with its tentacle, a hint of lingering resentment remained. I don't have any particular objections. The Amorph's decision ultimately led to the best possible outcome. I believe there are things to be learned from this. Don't learn those things. Odgrad and his mates are all dead. What remains now are the Galagons who withdrew from the battle. When they felt our gaze, they flinched. What should I do with them? Devouring them all would be a significant gain for me, but I wasn't sure how Adha would feel about it. At that moment, a slender white Galagon flew towards us. I Sha'vel Mog acknowledge Odgrad defeat. The one who introduced himself as Sha'vel Mog was the first Galagon among Odgrad's group to refuse to fight. Sha'vel Mog serve new leader request mercy. As his telepathic waves of surrender gently spread, other Galagons also relaxed their battle stances and approached us. I surveyed the remaining Galagons. There weren't many white Galagons left, most of them were green Galagons. I've already met all the apex conditions. While I could obtain some decent traits from the white Galagons, the green Galagons didn't offer anything particularly valuable. And there's not much time left on the symbol of hunt. Even if I took them down now, I wouldn't gain much genetic essence. After contemplating, I turned to Adha. ZZZZ, you decide. Great one stronger I know right. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZIt's time to put those struggles to rest. It's time to put those struggles to rest. Adha's eyes widened in understanding. The reason I passed the decision to her was simple. Even after joining me, Adha occasionally struggled with memories of being cast out due to her disability. I plan to keep her by my side in the future. Although her past pain hasn't directly caused problems yet, there's no guarantee it won't in the future. So I'm giving her a chance to heal her wounds. If she chooses war to release her resentment towards the pack, it wouldn't be a disadvantage to me. Although I won't fully benefit from the symbol's effect, taking down that many Galagons might still yield a couple of genetic essences. But what if she chooses forgiveness? That wouldn't be bad either. Galagons are formidable combat creatures. While I can't take them with me everywhere, they'd be excellent allies in critical planetary invasions. Adha's gaze shifted from me to others. She looked at each member of our group. Number 26 on my head, PS 111 and Nel Germa, the green Galagons behind them, and then Ham Ort and Mother of the Sky. After meeting everyone's eyes, she finally made her decision, turning decisively to face Odgrad's remnants. I daughter of Ham Ort Adha descendants of Odgrad submit. Sha'vel Mog great Adha serve. Sirkapcha great Adha serve. Odzioga great Adha serve. Starting with Sha'vel Mog, all the Galagons present bowed to Adha. Their posture was similar to how Adha had once bowed to me. It was the posture of reverence toward a new queen. Subsection 2 confirms the loss of target life signals. Special target A is confirmed to have subdued them. Combat with the dangerous species Galagon is concluded. According to logical analysis, special target A has merged with the Galagon group. Combat simulation results indicate a 17% probability of subjugating special target A if combat continues. Reporting the situation to main controller Pira 11. In the dark forest, where sunlight barely penetrated, small lights flickered like fireflies. However, such a sight was anything but natural on this frozen planet. It was certainly not a natural phenomenon for hundreds of blood-red lights to gleam and emit strange sounds. Confirmed, main controller Pira 11's revised orders. Preemptively strike the enemy's base. Secondary missions remain unchanged. After the strike, recover some of the necessary energy sources. Confirmed. Requesting order dissemination. Confirmed. As if something had been decided, the cluster of lights vanished at once. The voices that had accompanied the flickering lights ceased abruptly. In their place, sharp metallic sounds reverberated, and the undergrowth and trees began to shake. The eerie and ominous movements deep within the forest were a sight that could never be seen from the sky. Chapter 232. After the battle ended, The ones who were part of the Odd Grads group were now part of the Ad Hayes group and returned to their former nest. Nelgerma was assigned to lead them. Since Hamort's injuries hadn't fully healed, she returned to the cave nest I created with Mother of the Sky. Once she finished her recovery there, she planned to gather the blue Galagons and join Odgrad's nest. The rest of us are currently scouring the forest near the Twin Peaks to retrieve the fallen Galagons from the battle. While searching for bodies, PS-111 approached me. PS-111, being interested in biological genetics and energy supply, didn't go with Nelgerma but stayed here instead. It had a snow banshee captured in its clawed hand. N/O/vel/B//JN.C//ohm. The analysis of the battle results indicates that body size has a significant correlation with combat effectiveness. May I use this creature as an energy source to recalibrate my form? Kike. Kikikik. It seemed the snow banshee was coveting Galagon's corpse before PS-111 caught it. It hadn't been long since we descended into the forest, so the symbol of hunt effect had ended. The odds of me obtaining genetic essence from consuming the snow banshee now were low. There shouldn't be a problem if I hand it over. ZZZZZZZZZZ, just leave the Galagon's corpses behind. Understood. Kike. With my permission, it swung its scythe-shaped claws. An invisible wind blade shot out, slicing the snow banshee. Warm blood and entrails spilled onto the cold ground, and the tantalizing smell spread throughout the dry forest. PS-111 devoured the fragmented corpse. There weren't any threats to it nearby. Leaving it to its meal, I moved deeper into the forest. Big one, aren't you hungry? ZZZZZZZZ, I plan to eat something else. A little further from the Twin Peaks, I saw broken trees. The wide-spreading branches had snapped, a clear sign of something falling from the sky and colliding with them. At the end of the shattered branches lay a black mass. It looked like a meteorite that had fallen from space, but it was actually the decapitated body of Odgrad. It wasn't just the head that was gone. The impact of the collision with the ground had completely crumpled his wings, and his torso was twisted into a grotesque shape. This was the pitiful end of the Black Dragon who had overestimated his abilities and clung to the power of his former position. Is he the bad flappy leader? ZZ, yes. The meat of the Black Galagon is an excellent source of nutrition. Even its forelimbs and head alone could provide a large amount of energy. And it tastes amazing too. The meat of apex creatures always had a deep flavor that brought me pleasure. And the Black Galagon was the strongest of all the apex creatures I had consumed. The taste was overwhelmingly superb. I don't need to obsess over energy anymore. Thanks to the Berserker Synapse and the Dragon Heart, my energy supply had become more abundant than before. But that didn't mean I should pass up the chance to enjoy a delicious meal. Are you going to eat the leader? Z, yes. Enjoy your meal. I was about to tear into the corpse when I suddenly remembered something. Number 26, sitting on top of my head. Though it had currently shrunk its body to just 50 centimeters, it originally measured nearly 10 meters. This was the result of absorbing the psychic power of an adult sea demon in the past, leading to its dramatic growth. If I eat the Black Galagon, won't it have a similar effect? In the game, Galagons and sea demons were renowned as high-tier psychic creatures. Although they differed in appearance, habitat, and behavior, they both wielded extremely powerful psychic powers. Galagons grew in nests where psychic power was abundant, accumulating vast amounts of energy in their bodies. On the other hand, sea demons maintained and passed on their accumulated psychic power by transferring it to another sea demon before their death. Their methods differ, but they both contain a massive amount of psychic power. In fact, number 26 had once fed psychic power to the blue Galagons. This time, I would use the Galagon's corpse to empower it. I thrust my combat arms into the Black Galagon's abdomen. I could feel the warm organs and flesh at the tips of my fingers. Grabbing hold of its heart and other vital organs, I pulled them out. The still warm organs emitted a delicious aroma. I handed the freshly extracted meal to number 26, perched on my head. ZZZZZZZZ, how about you try eating this? Isn't this the prey you caught? ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ it's too full to eat it all by myself. It's delicious, so give it a try. Number 26 extended its tentacles to wrap around the food in my hand. Then, like stretching out a thin sheet of dough, it elongated its body and absorbed the meal through its tentacles. Soon, its body began to glow in a vibrant array of colors. ZZZZZ, How is it? Tasty, right? It's delicious. Zzzzzzzzzzz, there's still plenty left, so eat more. As soon as I gave permission, number 26 hopped off my head and started devouring Odgrad's corpse. It was always a voracious eater, but it seemed to particularly enjoy the organs of the black Galagon. Not long after number 26 started its meal, I sensed a presence from above. It was Adha, the Galagon with 4 red wings. She entered through the gap in the branches and landed beside me. Corpse, not far, arrived soon. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz, I'll finish eating this and head over there. Understood. Zzzzzzzzzzzzz, it's delicious, so you should try some too. Big kin, pray. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz, we caught it together. We should share the spoils. Is that so? When I nodded, she joined in on the feast. She climbed onto the corpse, inserted her tentacles through the torn skin, and started drinking the blood. Perfectly satisfying. Shivering slightly in delight, she eagerly consumed the blood. True to her Galagon nature, loyal to her kin but ruthless to her enemies, Adha had no qualms about feasting on Odgrad's corpse. Not that I, as an amorph, have any right to talk. Worried there might be nothing left if I delayed any longer, I decided to join in the meal. As I pondered where to start, I noticed the half-eaten forelimb. The clean cut at the joint was clearly my handiwork. The ring that was once attached to that limb is now securely clutched by one of my smaller hands near my chest. I had tried forcing the ring onto my finger after coming down to the ground, but it had no special effect. The ability to conceal my emotions didn't activate at all. Whether it required specific conditions or was exclusive to Odgrad remained unclear. For now, the ring was just a decorative gemstone without any apparent use. Oh well. It was rather disappointing for an item that didn't exist in the game. I considered discarding it, but there might still be something I don't know. I decided to keep carrying it with one of my smaller arms for the time being. Enough about the ring. It's time to eat. I tore my gaze away from the forelimb and grabbed onto one of the hind legs, ripping it off and taking a large bite. Nice. How could I describe the taste of black Galagon? It's a complex flavor that defies simple definition. It's like a blend of truffle oil and pepper. I had once tasted a dish with artificial truffle oil, and this was quite similar. The rich, oily scent of the meat was balanced by a sharp, spicy aroma from the blood. Unlike other apex creatures, the black Galagon's meat had a unique characteristic: its skin. The texture of the skin was like the crispy outer layer of roasted pork, crunchy and satisfying to bite into. The taste was even more extraordinary, with a deep, concentrated flavor seeping out. The meat itself was fairly tough, but not so much that it strained my amorph jaws. It was firm enough to chew on just the right amount before swallowing, allowing me to savor its rich taste. Once again, the rule holds: the stronger the enemy, the better the taste. I quickly finished off the hind leg and reached for its tail. Are you eating? Just as I was about to tear into the tail, I heard a voice behind me. Turning around, I saw PS 111. It had returned with a white Galagon corpse beside it, presumably after collecting it while we were eating. Zzzzzzzzz, so, you've gathered the bodies. Yes. It stared at me with its usual expressionless face. Or more precisely, it was staring at the black Galagon's tail in my hand. Screamers are controlled by devices connected to their brains. All of their physical activities are under the machine's command. The same applies to mutant screamers. But at this moment, I could tell exactly what it wanted. I tore off the tail and offered it to PS 111. That won't be necessary. Zzz, take it when it's offered. Thank you. As expected of a machine, it didn't refuse a second time. After the brief feast, I headed to the location Adha had indicated and retrieved the bodies. We couldn't carry them all, so we processed all but 4 on the spot. These 4 would be used for Hamort's treatment and as food for the Galagons. Since I was larger, I carried 3 bodies, while number 26 reverted to its original form and carried 1. With our spoils in tow, we started back to the nest in the cave. I think it might have changed. The appearance of number 26, now puffed up, didn't look much different from before. The fins that reminded me of a jellyfish and the tentacles protruding from its body were all familiar. Did it get bigger? Number 26 can freely adjust its size, so it's not easy to notice any changes. The most accurate way to check would be to measure the amount of energy it was harboring, but number 26 is adept at concealing its psychic power. I wouldn't know how much stronger it had become until it entered battle. Well, it might not have grown at all, so there's no need to dwell on it. There are still a few things left to try out, like the dragon's nest where psychic power continuously wells up. While pondering these thoughts as we made our way back to the nest, one of my sensory organs picked up on a scent. The scent was similar to fresh blood but slightly different. It was closer to the smell of metal. I couldn't identify it, but it felt oddly familiar. I stopped in my tracks. Big One, what's wrong? What's the matter? ZZ, quiet. I lowered my head close to the ground. At first, I thought the metallic scent might be coming from something buried in the soil, but that didn't seem to be the case. As I examined the scent, my gaze fell on PS-111. Its biomechanical body, a mix of metal and organic matter typical of screamers, emitted a scent of metal and the chemicals necessary for sustaining life. This was very similar to the scent my sensory organ had detected. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, does this area fall within a screamer's operating range? Not until my main controller was altered. I've traversed this forest, which leads to the Twin Peaks, many times. If there had been a screamer, I would have encountered it already. ZZZZZZZZZZZZ, I smell a screamer. Confirm it. Understood. PS-111 extended detection equipment resembling snail. Antennae from its eyes. It lowered its body close to the ground, using its hose-like sensors to probe the traces left behind. It wasn't long before it discovered tracks on the ground. 3 claw marks reminiscent of a bird's foot. They were screamer tracks. Chapter 233. Shadows spread over countless branches as the clouds that had scattered returned to block the sunlight. In the cool, ashen light, we followed the trail of the screamers. The once sporadic footprints were becoming increasingly frequent. Not just on the ground, but the surrounding trees and rocks were also covered with marks left by sharp alloy claws. It's not just 1 or 2. Given that screamers have 8 legs, it's natural for there to be many footprints, but even taking that into account, there were far too many. There had to be at least several dozen of them. How many screamers were deployed for this mission? I utilized stored genetic information to mimic a voice as I questioned PS-111. 300 units were deployed at the start of the mission. 300. That's quite a lot. Hearing its response, I was slightly surprised. Considering that standard screamers are almost treated like bio-drones in the Star Union, deploying 300 of them isn't particularly unusual. In large-scale ground battles in the game, thousands of screamers would often be deployed. But that was under the player's command. It's rare for the regular Star Union army to deploy screamers alone. Screamers possess formidable combat power, but they have a downside: a lack of strategic thinking and flexibility. So, when unexpected situations arise, they can't respond appropriately. Normally, you'd need something to make up for that shortcoming. The mutant screamers resolved the old model's flaws by categorizing them into standard models and commander models. The fact that mutant screamers' commander models possess superior strategic judgment is evident just by looking at PS-111. When fighting Oddgrad, it quickly understood the signal I sent and brought in the cruiser. A regular screamer would never have made such a decision. At least the good news is that their numbers should have significantly decreased by now. Given that the planet is teeming with dangerous creatures, it's unlikely that all 300 have survived unscathed. In fact, even PS-111 was nearly destroyed by an ice horror attack. How many do you think are left? 200. 250. I believe the total number hasn't decreased significantly from the original 300 units. Why is that? Although mutant screamers are powerful, they wouldn't come out unscathed after encountering apex creatures like ice horrors or glacier fiends. PS-111, which was searching for traces with its sensor protruding from its eye, responded. According to the data stored in my brain, the former main controller, Pura 11, had facilities on its ship capable of producing mutant screamers. What? As long as there is genetic information, a large energy source, and organic material to use as resources, it is possible to produce S-model screamers. In the lore, screamers are often seen as expendable, so it's rare to provide support via ships. The most you might get is orbital bombardment support after deploying the screamers. But since mutant screamers are more strategically valuable than older models, it seems they've allocated a dedicated support ship. Considering the scale of a screamer production line, it would likely require at least a Jamaa-class warship to house the facilities. Even then, they'd have to replace all the ship's maintenance facilities with repair equipment, Due to data loss, I can't provide an exact answer, but that seems like a reasonable assumption. The Zax-1 class warship is named after the capital planet of the Star Union. Often called Jax Alpha, this ship is the largest and most heavily armed of the Star Union's warships. Of course, in this case, it would have been heavily modified as a Screamer support ship, so it would differ greatly from its original form. The internal facilities and equipment would all have been removed and replaced with Screamer-related facilities, leaving only the minimal systems necessary to keep the ship operational. Do you remember where it landed? My apologies. Due to data loss, I cannot confirm that. The Jamaa-class warship is just under a kilometer in length. I haven't seen any signs of such a massive ship landing around here. Furthermore, the Galagons would never miss such a large ship entering the planet's atmosphere. If there's no mention of it, it must have top-tier stealth capabilities. As I thought about it, something felt off. Your mission was to capture me, right? If you're referring to the special objective as set by the former main controller, Pura 11, then yes. A Screamer that can self-repair and 300 units at that. Why have they been lying low all this time, when they could produce even more? Nov LB //JNN. In retrospect, there were several opportunities for them to attack me. When I first arrived on the planet, when I was weakened after fighting Jason, when I was ambushed by Oddgrad, and so on. However, they never gathered systematically to attack me, making the placement of a commander model to compensate for the Screamer's weaknesses seem pointless. So far, the only Screamers I've encountered have been stragglers. That leaves only one explanation: something must have gone wrong with Pura 11. After a moment of silence, it replied to my question. I don't know about that. You don't know. In the process of rebooting the system, memory data was damaged. However, it mechanically tilted its head. The movement resembled someone pressing their temple, trying to forcefully recall something they couldn't quite remember. In my last memory, Pura 11 was severely damaged and had entered a dormant state due to certain events. Dormant. Was it attacked by the Galagons? No, Pura 11. Error, excuse me. It was damaged after failing to perform actions necessary to achieve its objective. Summarizing what it said, it was clear that Pura 11 had been unable to operate normally for some time. Now that I think about it, the one I encountered when I went after the Winter Walkers said something similar. That one definitely mentioned being in a delayed command state. The others I encountered in the forest after killing Jason said the same thing. Considering all this, Pura 11, their commander, must have been inactive until relatively recently. These traces are proof that it's active again. That is a reasonable assumption. Though there was a high probability of encountering enemies, we had no useful information beyond knowing that there were many of them. Did PS-111 say it could control lower-tier units? When I first met it, it mentioned being able to physically connect to the circuits of lower models and take over their control. It would be great if it could do the same with commander-level units, but Pura 11 had improved the security of their control systems, making that impossible. I need to capture a few Screamers. Doing so would allow us to gather information about the ship's landing site, their plans, and other vital details. After our conversation ended, we continued following the traces for quite some time. At first, there were only footprints, but as time passed, other signs became apparent. Scattered around the footprints were the remains of creatures, torn to shreds. They've been replenishing their energy. Looks like it. PS-111, which had the functions of the Blood Reaver implanted in it, could replenish its energy by absorbing bioenergy in addition to consuming meat with its mouth. It was an exception. Regular Screamers absorbed nutrients by sucking up small prey through intake tubes attached to their mouths. The blood's been dry for a while. Given the dry, cool environment, the fragments of corpses had only begun to decay slowly. This allowed me to make a rough guess about how they hunt it. So they've modified some of them after all, just like the ones equipped with production facilities. Just as PS-111 had upgraded itself by absorbing genes, some of the enemy Screamers had adapted to their environment. For instance, by acquiring ranged attack capabilities. I pulled out a large bullet, about the size of my finger, from the pool of blood. It resembled a depleted uranium round used by a storm gun, but it was far more threatening. Do you know what this is? It resembles a depleted uranium round used by the UPDT, but upon inspecting the internal structure, it appears to have been modified into a cluster munition. Exactly. It's mixed with black-silver fragments. As I shook the deformed bullet, a small amount of black-silver alloy shards fell out. It wasn't a large amount, but it was enough to be a lethal threat to certain species. And on this planet, there's only one type of creature that could be significantly harmed by a cluster munition infused with black silver. Galagons. I think I know what they're targeting. Do you know where Oddgrad's nest is? Yes. It's this way. There's no time, so get on top and guide me. Time was of the essence, so I unloaded the corpses I was carrying and placed PS-111 on my head. I then called for number 26 and Adha. Zzzzzzzzzzz, there's no time, get on my back. Aren't you taking the prey? Zzzzzzzzzzzzz, we'll come back for it later. Number 26, sensing the gravity of the situation, didn't ask any more questions and quietly climbed onto my body. It shrank down and nestled into the small arms on my chest. Holding it securely, I called out to Adha. Zzzzzzzzzzz, we're flying. Get ready. Where are we going? Zzzzzzzzzzz, we're heading to Oddgrad's nest. I spread out my folded wing arms wide. The massive membranes extended, and my body soared upward rapidly, shattering branches as I ascended. Adha followed closely behind me. Is the nest in danger? Zzz, possibly. Just keep heading in this direction. Adha tensed up at the mention of potential danger to the nest. I flew at full speed in the direction PS-111 indicated. While flying, I kept a vigilant watch below with my auxiliary sensors, wary of the possibility that screamers might open fire from the forest. Despite my shadow and Adha's passing over the area, there was no reaction from below. The situation isn't good. There must be hundreds of screamers swarming somewhere in that forest, yet it was eerily quiet. I couldn't decipher their intentions, but it was definitely not a good sign. After nearly half a day of tense flight, the cliffs where PS-111 said the dragon's nest was located began to come into view. There were no signs of screamers or any other creatures near the cliffs. Wait, there's nothing visible. By now, Nell Germa, Adha's deputy, should have returned. With the nest this close, at least one or two Galagons should have shown themselves. Great one, something's wrong, the group isn't on guard. Adha seemed to have sensed the same thing, sending out a puzzled mental wave. Galagons always kept sentries at their nests because of predators like the sky wolves. Green Galagons or white Galagons would take turns guarding the nest, anticipating unexpected attacks. The absence of such guards meant something was seriously wrong. I was about to warn Adha to be cautious when my auxiliary sensors detected movement in the forest below. The forest, which had been completely silent until just moments ago, suddenly sprang to life. The movement was simultaneous and widespread, like an army of ants marching. Realizing what this meant, I urgently sent a wave to Adha. Zzzzzzzzzzz, Adha. Use your power. At the same time I sent out the wave, an overwhelming number of projectiles erupted from the forest. A rain of death, blacker than the clouds above, was flying towards me and Adha, intent on taking our lives. I shielded number 26 with my combat arms and moved beneath Adha. The black-silver cluster rounds, so densely packed they obscured my vision, pelted my entire body. As I'm not a psychic creature, those anti-psychic rounds didn't deal much damage to me. Moreover, with their lack of penetration power, those cluster munitions couldn't pierce my carapace and scales. But they can still hurt them. While the shots did nothing to me, it was a different story for Adha and number 26. Number 26, who heavily relied on psychic power, would be rendered completely incapacitated if hit by those black-silver cluster rounds. Adha was in a better position, thanks to her red armor absolute defense technique, but even she could only protect her head and part of her forelimbs, leaving her vulnerable to their attack. Zzzzz, is everyone okay? I'm fine. Thanks to you, Great One. Fortunately, my shielding had kept both number 26 and Adha from taking any damage. I took a few hits, but the injuries are minor. The only exception was PS-111, who, being perched on my head, had been an easy target and took a few hits. I'll make sure you get some good prey later. Understood. After a brief reloading period, the firing from the ground resumed. The screamers were intent on killing Adha and number 26, even if they couldn't take me down, shooting wildly in a frenzy. This isn't a good place to fight. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz, Adha, stick close to me and follow. Taking hits from the screamers' bullets, I flew toward the nest. Adha clung to my back, following closely. I then landed at a suitable spot near the screamer positions. As soon as I touched down, the trees around us shook ominously. A horde of screamers was closing in on us. Chapter 234. The forest is moving. Amid the sound of wind rustling through the trees, an artificial metallic noise can be heard. Hundreds of screamers are approaching. Big one, Ken, will it be okay? Adha, who was hiding behind me using my body as cover, asked with concern. Not all of them could have died. We are currently in the forest on the opposite side of the cliff where the nest is located, along with the screamers. If we leave the forest and reach the steep cliff, a massive river flows between us. It's the same path that the Mother of the Sky and Ham-Ort used to escape. On the cliff across that river, countless caves are carved into the rock. These caves are the entrance to the dragon's nest. The terrain itself is a natural fortress, clearly difficult to breach. For screamers without flight capability, breaking through there would come with considerable casualties. It's likely that the Galagons are in a defensive position. It's probable that many Galagons in the nest have already perished. Initially, they must have fought the screamers outside, but as the damage grew severe, they likely changed their strategy to defend from within the nest. If the Galagons had been completely wiped out, the enemies would have ambushed us from the nest rather than here. ZZZZZ. ZZZZZZZZZZZZ. Don't worry. We'll find an opportunity to head to the nest. Understood. Given that Galagons are sensitive to psychic power, Adha's arrival would surely have been noticed. The fact that they haven't come out suggests the situation inside the nest isn't good. Perhaps something unfortunate has happened to Nell Germa, who was in charge of the nest. We need to join up with the nest soon. The distance from here to the nest isn't far. We'll need to fight and move when the opportunity arises. Even while I'm lost in thought, the enemies keep advancing. The movements detected by the auxiliary organs under my chin increase exponentially. As I'm contemplating the best moment to strike, number 26, who was nestled in my chest, lightly tapped me. Big baby. ZZZ, what is it? I feel something similar to a friend over there. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, they are not friends but dangerous enemies. PS 111 and other Commander class mutant screamers contain sea demon genes. Because of this, number 26 perceives PS 111 as a being similar to its kin. It should be fine since I scolded it last time, but I was about to warn it again, worried that it might hesitate, but number 26 spoke first. The bad ones are talking to each other. ZZZZZZ, talking to each other. Yes. They're using difficult words, so I don't understand what they mean. I focused on the auxiliary organs again, but apart from faint electromagnetic waves coming from a special machine, I couldn't sense any psychic signals. Is it a wavelength that only bubble amoebas or sea demons can detect? ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ number 26 has detected their conversation. Can you hear anything? I asked, and a voice came from above. It was PS 111, perfectly camouflaged among the branches. The independent line has been reconstructed according to the new main controller, so it is impossible to use or detect the PS model's exclusive line. Really? If we could eavesdrop on their communications, we could effectively counter their plans. But since PS 111 said it's impossible, there's nothing we can do. I asked number 26 if it could relay what it had heard. Mayan Yung Yuwang. Yuwang Taeyong. ZZZZZZZZZZZZ. It sounds like something about a flanking attack. What's a flanking attack? Unfortunately, although number 26 could eavesdrop, it didn't understand the meaning of the conversation. If we had more time to slowly decipher the information it overheard, that would be ideal, but it's not possible. Wait, hold on. Just as I was feeling frustrated, an idea struck me. Number 26 can spread its psychic power widely, creating an effect similar to an imp. This power is strong enough to stop a spaceship in its tracks. If that's the case, couldn't it interfere with their communications? When I asked if it was possible, it responded that it could and began to glow. I can silence them. Should I do it now? ZZZZZZZZZ. No. Wait for my signal. Using it right away might not be a bad idea, but I decided to wait a bit longer. As seen with PS 111, mutant screamers are bioweapons that learn through combat. Even if we block their communications, if one or two manage to slip away, it would be like throwing away a valuable card. We need to wait for the perfect moment to wipe them out. And here, there are far too many opportunities for them to escape. At that moment, the figures of the enemies came into view through the trees. Though their heads bore the pale faces of humans, beneath them were mechanical parts, tubes, and hard metallic skeletons intertwined. Their biomechanical bodies had 8 elongated legs. These legs, with exposed red muscle intertwined with metal tubes, ended in 3 alloy claws. The creatures, resembling mechanical spiders, with human heads, glowed with red eyes. From those red eyes, there was no emotion except a single-minded intent to tear apart their enemies. I opened my jaw wide and activated my acidic mycotic glands. An oval-shaped green mass shot from my mouth, striking the base of a tree far away. The tree's roots quickly dissolved, and it toppled in the direction the screamers were coming from. Some of the advancing screamers leapt into the air. And then, I unleashed a psychic breath toward those airborne. It was like the breath of a dragon from a movie, pouring out toward them. Black metal defense, on. Unable. The airborne screamers were reduced to dust before they could finish their sentence. The screamers following behind them chattered as they witnessed this. Special target confirmed using high-risk psychic breath. Recording. As expected, they were recording their battle with me. That information would likely be transmitted immediately to their leader, Pura 11. It doesn't matter. The number of abilities I possess isn't just 1 or 2. And some of them, I can alter at will. Sometimes, knowing too much can be worse than knowing nothing. I deliberately allowed the enemies to gather information as I continued to unleash my psychic breath. The purple flames engulfed the densely packed trees, but the screamers deftly dodged them. Confirmed that modified cluster munitions are ineffective. Switching to high-velocity shock rounds. Switch order confirmed. Meanwhile, more screamers approached our position. As they got close enough to be identified by the naked eye, they began preparing to fire. Their legs twisted, transforming into shapes resembling the barrel of an RPG-7. The muzzles of their guns pointed directly at my head. In the dark forest, a flash of light sparked like lightning, and I felt a sharp pain in my head. High-velocity shock rounds. Just as Megacorp would deploy plasma launchers against heavily armored enemies, Star Union has a similar weapon. HSB, Heavy Shock Blaster, commonly known as the Shocker, is the equipment's nickname. It was developed to counter heavily armored bioweapons like Megacorp's Hulk mutants and boasts significant lethality. The reason is that the Shocker's rounds, instead of penetrating the target, create a super vibration upon impact, causing damage within the armor. For example, if a creature like a mountain crawler, clad in thick armor, is hit by a high-velocity shock round, the exterior may remain intact, but the interior is utterly destroyed. That's why, even though there wasn't a scratch on the area I was hit, I felt a sharp pain. They responded cleverly, but unless they have thousands of high-velocity shock rounds stored inside them, killing me will be difficult. Even if my insides are shaken up, I have plenty of ways to quickly recover, including my regenerative abilities. Besides, the Shocker has a weakness. The screamers fired another volley of high-velocity shock rounds. With thick smoke, alloy projectiles flew from all directions, aiming to shatter my head. However, none of the high-velocity shock rounds reached my head. An incomprehensible situation has occurred. It is presumed that the massive psychic power has caused a distortion of physical laws. Analysis required. The bullets were suspended in mid-air as if time had stopped. Those sensitive to psychic power would realize that the bullets were caught in an invisible web made of psychic threads. I really hate it when they try to hurt Big Baby. The owner of the invisible web shook its tendrils vigorously. The high-velocity shock rounds changed direction and flew back toward their owners, exploding on impact. The screamers, caught off guard, couldn't evade and were blown apart. Meanwhile, I prepared 2 cards to further disrupt the enemies. It's time to work. Everyone, come out. The nest of tooth fairies, located just before the carapace on my tail, and the host of the face worms, who nest on my back when not in hunting mode, were both activated. Large fleas with sharp teeth tore out of the nests on my body and fell to the ground. From my back, face worms, with the faces of intelligent beings and the bodies of insects, tore through the membranes resembling human faces and emerged. Tooth fairies, create chaos among them. Face worms, target the commander class entities. The swarm of insects moved in response to my orders. Enemy entities are proliferating. Small size detected. High-velocity shock rounds ineffective. The tooth fairies scuttled across the shallowly snow-covered battlefield, clinging to the screamers' legs. Their powerful teeth, capable of destroying even carrier-based aircraft, gnawed through the metal skeletons. Disregard small entities. Engage in close combat instead, Kajik. The commander-class PS models stationed in the rear flinched as they were ambushed by face worms. The sonic waves emitted by the face worms had paralyzed their entire bodies. If they were purely machines, it wouldn't have worked, but they aren't. Mutant screamers are hybrids of organic and mechanical components. While they are controlled by machines, they still have auditory systems, making them susceptible to the paralyzing sonic waves. Suspected attack targeting auditory functions. Deactivating auditory systems, Kajik. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ. Target the paralyzed and fallen ones. The mutant screamers have the ability to self-destruct when necessary. If their systems remain functional, they could explode at any moment, causing us significant damage. Hearing my signal, Adha swiftly unleashed another psychic breath. Specializing in rapid fire, she quickly dispatched the incapacitated screamers. Special target be confirmed to possess a unique barrier. Unable to deactivate with current equipment. Must target areas without the barrier. The screamers attempted to target Adha when she exposed her head to unleash her breath, but it was in vain. Adha's head was protected by red armor. No weapon could shatter her head. Naturally, some screamers tried to target her body or wings, but each time, I extended my wing arms to shield her. In other words, unless the screamers could kill all of us at once, their chances of victory were slim. The same goes for us, though. Nov LB //JNN. When attacked from the sky, I expected around a few hundred of them, and as I suspected, their numbers were overwhelming. Moreover, their responses were becoming more efficient as time passed. While they were currently struggling to respond to our continuous barrage of unconventional attacks, that would only last for so long. Once they figured out a strategy, we would suffer significant losses. If they decide to self-destruct en masse, we won't be able to stop it. It was time to move to the nest. I slowly maneuvered while engaging the enemies. Some of the screamers abandoned their guns and approached me. Each time, I countered with my invasive tendrils. The serpent-like tendrils shot out from my back, striking the approaching enemies. One screamer, however, managed to dodge the tendrils and got in close. As it aimed a cluster round at number 26, a navy blue energy round shot from the trees above, severing the screamer's head. It collapsed on the spot. Interfering with the main controller is unforgivable. Enemy in the trees, suppression required. Identified as a decommissioned PS model. Estimated series in the 100s. Weakness confirmed. The screamers, seemingly shifting their target to PS 111, began unloading their ammunition into the trees. In that moment, I seized the opportunity to grab Adha with my tail and made a dash toward the nest. Predicting the enemy's route, likely heading to the Galagon's nest. They must be stopped before Kajik. The screamers, realizing my intention, attempted to intercept us. But they were hindered by the tooth fairies, face worms, and our allies' relentless attacks. Main controller Pira 11 has issued a revised command. Retreat and regroup. Additional countermeasures are being devised. Confirmed. Receiving the directive from their leader, the screamers ceased their pursuit. Taking advantage of the respite, PS 111 and I escaped toward the cliff where the nest was located. As soon as we emerged from the forest and saw the cliff above, I unfurled my wings without hesitation. The face worms, their work done, clung to my back and returned to their respective nests. Thank you. I gently grasped the trailing PS 111 with a pincer on my tail and glided into one of the nest's entrances. Not long after we set foot inside the cave, a Galagon emerged from the depths. It was Shah Velmog, the emaciated white Galagon who had first rebelled during the battle against Odgrad. Shah Velmog, great Adha, welcome. His condition was far from good. His wings were torn in several places, and all his hind legs were gone, forcing him to drag himself forward with his forelegs. Seeing this, Adha emitted a wave of psychic energy filled with dismay. What happened? Smelly enemies, attacked, white kin, united strength, barely repelled, many kin, dead. What about Nel Germa? Nel Germa, severely injured, unable to fight. The Galagons are crucial combatants. We can't afford to lose them all. I grabbed Shah Velmog with my combat arm. ZZZ, lead the way. This way, follow. Following his guidance, we entered deeper into the dragon's nest. The entire cliff seemed to be the dragon's lair. The cave was extensive, with many branching paths. The corridors were wide enough for me to move comfortably, and the walls were studded with minerals that absorbed psychic power, providing ample light. Honestly, if it weren't for the urgency of the situation, I would have liked to take my time to observe the beauty of this place. After navigating the long and complex natural maze, we arrived at a vast chamber. The shimmering light of the minerals, like starlight, illuminated the countless Galagons lying wounded on the ground. Everyone, badly injured. Adha was right. In the center of the chamber was a shallow lake, but it had turned into a lake of blood due to the Galagons' wounds. This isn't good. With so many Galagons to heal, there's only one way to do it. I gently set down Chauvel Mog and crawled into the lake. Soon, black, viscous fluid began pouring out of my body. Chapter 235. Although the Amorph is limited in how many nests it can create, the process itself isn't particularly difficult. Compared to the Outspacer, whose nesting conditions are extremely stringent, it's almost like having no conditions at all. However, just because the process is simple doesn't mean that raising a proper nest is easy. The Amorph still has to consider various factors if it wants to grow a nest successfully. Factors like its evolutionary stage, the energy it possesses, and the suitability of the surrounding environment all need to align to establish a large-scale nest. And right now, I have fulfilled all the conditions to create the best possible nest. There's a lake here where the wounded Galagon have gathered, which helps the slime spread easily. But that's not all. The dragon's nest is located in an area with a high concentration of psychic power. The walls of this cavern, where I'm standing, are brimming with intense psychic energy, providing plenty of nourishment for the slime that has detached from my body. In an instant, I dyed the lake black and attached symbiotic spores to the fallen Galagon. Some were so severely injured that I immediately threw them into the contaminated lake after implanting the symbiotic spores. Among them was Nelgerma. Black kin, Nelgerma, nest, defense, failed. ZZZZZZZ, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Nelgerma had a severe wound in her abdomen, so deep that her internal organs were visible. It was an injury that would have killed any creature not as robust as a Galagon. But not all of them were as resilient as she was. Great one, kin, dead. Adha sent a telepathic wave as she stood before the corpse of a green Galagon. Her deep sorrow echoed throughout the cavern. So many have died. As I moved the wounded Galagon, I counted the survivors. Including Nelgerma, only 13 adults had survived. 4 white Galagon and 9 green Galagon. Most of the Galagon we had fought so hard to acquire had perished. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ Check if the young ones are safe. Since the Galagon gave their lives to the nest, the young ones should be unharmed. They're probably hiding, waiting for the nest to become safe again. To comfort Adha, who was overwhelmed by the loss of her kin, showing her that the blue Galagon were still alive would be far better than any words. Understood. Great Adha, this way. A relatively less injured green Galagon led Adha away from the clearing. I didn't expect it to come to this. The greatest prize from hunting Oddgrad had actually been the Galagon horde. My plan had been to lead them to attack apex creatures or space fortresses on other planets. But those damn screamers outside completely ruined my plans. Even if the young ones survived, it will take a long time for them to grow. How dare they touch my Galagon? It's been a long time since I've been this furious. Not since my evolution was interrupted during a game have I felt such rage. I won't let those disgusting scraps of metal go unpunished. There's only one way to kill them all. I lay down on the lake, filled with sticky black liquid. As my secondary organ beneath my jaw touched the lukewarm slime, my senses were drawn downward. My consciousness detached from my heavy carapace and the hard scales of my physical body, merging with the vast cavern and the expansive lake. My senses expanded further along the tunnels connected to the cavern. How can I describe this feeling? It's similar to the sensation when your body regains feeling as you wake up. In fact, it's not all that different. My consciousness has passed into the nest, making the lake my heart and the black slime my limbs. In the past, I have connected with nests in various places, megacorp research ships, space cities, and more, to observe and plan where and when to strike the enemies. This time is no different. Having successfully linked with the nest, I began to closely examine the structure of the Galagon's home. I could sense what was happening along the network of tunnels branching out like an ant's nest. The trembling blue Galagon, as large as Adha, checking on their young and feeling relieved, and the completely empty caves. No need to see everything. I shifted my focus away from Adha and directed it toward the entrances in the cliffs. There were a total of 4 entrances, including the cave we had entered. There were also several other tunnels, but they were all dead ends, false entrances. At my will, the slime forming the nest rapidly extended toward the passages connected to the cliffside entrances. The elements needed to maintain the nest were abundant, allowing for rapid expansion. At this rate, all the tunnels leading to the entrances will be coated in slime within a few hours. I disengaged from the nest and summoned number 26 and PS-111. ZZZZZZZZZZZ. We'll lure the enemy here and trap them. In this naturally formed labyrinth, I plan to wipe them out in one fell swoop. But to do that, I'll need their help. How do you plan to deal with their suicide attacks? I don't think they'll resort to that. If we were outside, it might be different, but the likelihood of them triggering a suicide attack after entering the nest is low. If that were their plan, they would have already attempted a suicide charge to bury the dragon's nest. There's only one reason they haven't done that. Galagon genes. As PS-111 mentioned, Pura 11 needs genetic information to produce mutant screamers. Not just any genetic information, but high-grade genes like those of a sea demon. Since this can't be manufactured on a ship, they have to acquire it from outside. And there's probably no place more enticing than the Galagon nest. Even if their suicide tactics succeed, if all the Galagon are buried, the screamers gain nothing. Moreover, they've fought me before. They know full well that I won't die even if the cliff collapses. Therefore, instead of suicide attacks, they'll try to subdue me using other methods. Whatever they attempt, it's meaningless. There's no place the Amorph fights better than in a dark, narrow labyrinth full of tunnels. I explained to number 26 and PS-111 how we would fight. The screamers who dare to attack the dragon's nest will pay dearly. Minus. Enhanced detection equipment capability applied. Newly acquired Galagon and dangerous creature Hellside Hornet biological characteristics reflected. Long-range attack capabilities need improvement. In the frozen forest, countless screamers prepared for battle. Due to recent consecutive battles, their numbers had been greatly reduced to 100 units. The total number of units deployed for the Galagon nest assault and the special target a construction mission was 209. 189 S models and 20 PS models were deployed, but the remaining numbers were 90 S models and 10 PS models. More than half had been deactivated. Despite this, the android Pura 11 of the Mechanical Committee did not give up. That's because the remaining 100 units had been significantly reinforced, compensating for their previous weaknesses. Thanks to the genetic information supplied by the debris of destroyed screamers and the drones from the ship, the remaining 100 screamers were vastly different from before. Regardless of model, all screamers originally had 8 legs, but the 100 screamers present here had varying numbers of legs. Some had 16, others had 12. N/O/bell/b//in.c//ohm. Apart from the metal skeletons, the biological tissue had become even more grotesque. Some units had red flesh rapidly expanding, covering the tubes and skeleton, while others had long, scythe-like claws protruding from various parts of their bodies. No two of the 100 units were alike, but they all shared one common trait. They looked as if they had been sculpted by a demon from hell, utterly horrifying. From a human perspective, they were monstrosities, but not to Pura 11. To it, the 100 units present were the perfect killing machines, optimized for slaughter and massacre. Among them, a PS model with 8 large eyes attached to its body relayed Pura 11's orders. Deploy detection units. 10 S models, fitted with large mechanical components, leapt toward the opposite cliff. Previously, they would have fallen straight into the river flowing between the cliffs, but not anymore. As the screamers spread their legs, wide membranes unfolded between them. Gliding like flying squirrels, they landed at the cave entrance on the opposite cliff. Detection commencing. Tracking life signals. When the 10 models opened their mouths, ultrasonic waves were emitted, penetrating deep into the cave. This ability was acquired by absorbing the genetic information of the cave goyle, which inhabits the icy terrain of this planet. Confirmed 4 entrances leading to the nest. Deploy combat units. Proceed in stages. 20 S models and 2 PS models, grotesquely modified, moved in pairs. Outside, 2 PS models remained to coordinate with Pura 11. A total of 4 teams slowly entered the entrances, one by one. Outside, PS Model PS5 synthesized the incoming data from the commanders inside and issued orders. B team entering. C team encountered a fork. Moving right. D team found a cavern. Evidence of Galagon activity detected. E-Team detected life signals 220 meters ahead. Preparing for combat. E-Team, continue tracking life signals. D-Team, investigate activity traces. Despite the powerful psychic energy emanating from the Galagon's nest, there were no significant issues with their communications. This was due to the use of a unique psychic circuit derived from Sea Demon genetics. And within 10 minutes of entry, a report came in from E-Team, which had detected life signals. Identified as a symbiotic creature of special target, a sample collected and transmitted. Confirmed. PS5 waited for the small drone to bring back the genetic sample. However, even after several minutes, there was no sign of the drone. Request confirmation from E-Team. The sample transport drone has not arrived. It was dispatched 5 minutes and 45 seconds ago. 5 minutes should have been more than enough time for the drone to show up. PS5 issued another command. Recheck the entry route. Confirmed. Anomaly detected. Report the nature of the anomaly. The passage is BCZT. Changing. BCZT. Scanning NA. BCZT. Circuit malfunction detected. Verify with other teams. B-Team reports no anomalies. C-Team reports no anomalies. D-Team reports. Life signs detected 100 meters ahead. Preparing for comb. BCZT. Now, even D-Team's communication was starting to experience interference, just like E-Team. This had never happened before, and PS5 couldn't help but feel uneasy. Their communication circuits didn't rely on ordinary mechanical devices. They used the biological organs within their bodies to communicate, making malfunctions seemingly impossible. Hurriedly, it reported the situation to Pura 11 while issuing the standard command for such situations. D-Team. Report again. BCZT. No issues. BCZT. Confirming. BCZT. D-Team, circuit malfunction detected. Please confirm again. Confirmed. No circuit malfunction, but a new issue has arisen. Report. Structural changes in the nest have been detected. E-Team confirms that the entry route has changed. Initiating rescan. Although communication had returned to normal, the reports that followed were baffling. Structural changes in the nest. Unless it was a living organism, such a thing should be impossible. But as more reports came in, PS5 was forced to reconsider. B-Team detects life signs from all directions. C-Team detects life signs. Correction, life signs detected simultaneously 10 meters in front and behind. D-Team observes changes in the current terrain. Scanning function ineffective. E-Team detects life signs from all directions. Unpredictable. 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 All the PS models were reporting the same thing. The passage they were standing on, the vast Galagon nest, was alive. Chapter 236. Screamers are controlled entirely by machines connected to their brains. While the original consciousness remains, all physical control is dominated by the machinery. Despite their name, screamers can't even let out a sound of their own will. They're essentially moving prisons. This holds true for the new mutant screamers as well. Though there are differences, such as the uncertain identity of the modified subjects and the ability to alter organic parts through gene absorption, they are still bio-weapons under machine control. The greatest advantage of an AI-controlled combat unit is its lack of fear. Whether witnessing a comrade being vaporized by a plasma round or seeing a Hulk mutant tear apart a regular soldier, they remain unfazed. They simply continue advancing toward their objective. Of course, the consciousness within the creature serving as a screamer might feel fear, but that doesn't matter. Once the emotion control module connected to their brain is activated, their emotions won't influence their actions. In any case, screamers don't fear unexpected situations. Even if space itself starts shifting, or if life signs suddenly appear throughout the entire cave, they remain undeterred. D-Team, recalibrate your detection system. B-Team switching to thermal detection. Heat detected throughout the passage, making it ineffective. C-Team confirms that the sonic detection system acquired through cave goyle genes remains effective. E-Team psychic detection sys. BCZT, testing. BCZT. Reporting to Pura 11. All units stand by. BCZT. Psychic interference detected. Communication lines need restructuring. At the command of the mutant screamer responsible for D-Team's communications, the other units went on standby. The monstrous creatures, with their grafted features from various organisms, used their respective detection organs to monitor their surroundings. Then, from deep within the cave, gray smoke began to slither out. A screamer in the vanguard detected it and reported. Toxic substances detected in the air. Connect the respiratory tubes. Some tubes connected to their metal skeletons and life support systems detached and plugged into their mouths. QO, analyzing harmful elements in the air. 78% probability of enemy ambush, QO. The screamers of D-Team communicated in harsh mechanical voices, their mouths sealed by the tubes. Toxic mist seeping into the narrow passageway signaled an imminent enemy attack. The screamers drew their weapons and focused on the direction ahead. QO. A rough breathing sound echoed through the cave, mixed with another noise. The squelching sound of footsteps on muddy ground. Someone was approaching. QO. Magmagators ignition organs confirmed to be effective, QO. Initiate preemptive strike, QO. Several screamers with abnormally swollen flesh moved forward. Metal pipes nestled within their bloated flesh aimed toward the front. A moment later, intense flames burst forth from the pipes, engulfing the passage. The fire, fueled by gas and flammable substances stored within their bodies, consumed the corridor. Then, from deep inside the passage, a purple energy bolt shot out, striking one of the flame-spewing screamers. Flesh burst open, and the flammable substances inside spilled out, covering the nearby screamers. The mutant screamers' metal skeletons and mechanical parts were highly resistant to heat. Their organic exteriors were genetically engineered to withstand high temperatures. None of them cared that their bodies were burning. Of course, the original minds within them were screaming in silent agony from the searing pain. Confirmed Galagon presence, QO. Commence counterattack. The screamers aimed their newly attached limbs forward, firing translucent purple energy bolts. These were psychic rifles, formed by absorbing Galagon genes. As psychic energy bolts rained down over the roaring flames, the dark passage was instantly illuminated. At the end of the long corridor, a small, red-skinned Galagon quickly retreated. Commence pursuit of the target, QO. Confer. Just as D-Team screamers prepared to pursue, a PS unit in the rear suddenly collapsed mid-response. All eyes turned to the fallen unit. Its head was completely gone. And then, another dark blue energy bolt flew from behind, once again targeting the head of the PS model unit serving as the commander. The D-Team's commander unit raised its metal leg to block the attack. The leg vanished without a trace, as if it had been hit by a cultist's disintegration weapon. Confirmed effect similar to the cultist disintegration weapon demolisher, QO. QO, deploying countermeasures for obfuscation attacks. Ambush from the side. Ambush. Just as they were preparing to target the enemies ahead and behind, the black walls on both sides of the passage suddenly melted away. From within, white-scaled Galagons sprang out. The screamers had assumed they were standing in a straight tunnel, but they were wrong. This place was originally a junction. Minus. Communication with D-Team is poor. Attempting to restore the connection. B-Team and C-Team have merged and entered a large chamber. B-Team continued to attempt communication with the commanders of the teams that had gone ahead. Mutant screamers, with genes spliced from sea demons and various psychic organisms, were experiencing communication disruptions, an impossible situation. They weren't using electronic devices but rather their unique psychic powers to communicate, so who could possibly interfere? Nov LB //JNN. A powerful psychic entity, like a sea demon, could disrupt the connection, but that was impossible. The former ruler of this nest, the Black Galagon, was already dead, and there were no sea demons on this planet. Two commander models of E-Team were trying to figure out the cause of the communication disruption when a command came through from outside. Transmitting orders from Pura 11. Consider it a trap and retreat immediately. Order acknowledged. Retreating. There had been interference since earlier, so they were lucky to have received the message. E-Team quickly prepared to exit the nest. Although they hadn't made contact with the screamers of D-Team, that was something for Pura 11, the overall commander, to handle. They, serving as mere intermediaries, didn't need to worry about it. The map records are meaningless due to periodic structural changes. Based on our current position, breaking through the wall seems most effective. Confirmed. Preparing to break through. A screamer with many legs moved forward. Those with genes from the Hellside Hornet had very large claws attached to their legs. The Hellside Hornet uses its scythe-like claws to dig through the soil in the caves it inhabits. Just as the original did, these screamers intended to dig through the wall to escape. The screamers with scythe-like forelegs began excavation. Each movement of the sharp claws tore through the solid wall as if it were sand. There is an unidentified substance mixed in with the soil. Life signs detected within the substance. The scythe-like claws were covered in a black, viscous material. That substance might be what was interfering with their communication. The commander-level PS models in the rear immediately relayed this information externally. Anomalous material not found in Galagon nests detected. Drone usage is not possible, so transmitting relevant information only. CHHCZ, material, ZCZT, confirmation, CHCZ, confirmed. New material detected, transmitting data. Please confirm. The previously stable communication suddenly deteriorated rapidly. As the E-Team commanders tried to report again, another transmission came through. ZCZT, ZCZT, confirmed, ZCZT, malfunction, ZCZT, malfunction. Communication failure. Please confirm. ZCZT, malfunction, CHCZZT, malfunction, malfunction, ZCZT, malfunction, malfunction. PS5. Malfunction, 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 malfunction. The sudden communication overload forced the PS models to quickly cut off the connection. When they tried to reconnect, it was completely dead. But that wasn't the only problem. Simultaneously with the communication cutoff, an overwhelming flow of psychic power was sensed from behind them. Even the screamers digging through the wall sensed it and turned around. A pink, balloon-like object was now sitting in the black passageway. Even to the screamers, it was a completely out-of-place object, but the commander-level units immediately recognized what it was. It was something that should never exist on this planet, something that must not be here. Enemy. Inco. The PS model attempting to issue a command froze mid-sentence. The units that were about to charge at the pink balloon also stopped in their tracks. As if time had stopped, every screamer present ceased all movement. Not only that, but their bodies began to slowly rise into the air. And then, as if being crushed by an invisible force, their bodies started to merge and compress. The high-strength alloy skeletons bent like rubber, and the mechanical components connected to the organic parts sparked and shattered. The mutant screamers' bodies contorted as if they had been thrown into the crushing depths of the ocean. Danger, danger, danger. Some of the screamers fired off psychic energy bolts, but it was futile. The bolts froze mid-air, as if they too were being held in place by an unseen force. SW swapped to cluster bombs, cha-cha. Ka cannot resist. Re-retreat, re-RT. They attempted to switch from energy bolts to physical weaponry, but it was futile. With their internal modules and metallic skeletons in shambles, there was nothing they could do. All they could manage was a final death cry. Minutes passed, and the passage fell silent. The dozens of screamers that had been there were no more. Instead, a large, blood-red sphere floated in the air. As the pink balloon disappeared into the darkness, the sphere split open, spilling its contents. A gruesome mix of blood, flesh, shattered metal fragments, and foul-smelling chemicals spilled out. The remains scattered across the floor were quickly absorbed by the black slime coating the cave walls. Soon, nothing was left. While others were under attack, B-Team and C-Team continued to advance deeper into the cave. Before the communication was cut off, their last received orders were to search the nest and eliminate Special Target A. They had decided to proceed with the exploration to gather as much information as possible needed to achieve the objective. After advancing for some time, they came upon a massive chamber unlike anything they had seen before. Chamber detected. High moisture levels in the air. Traces of numerous creatures detected. Within the chamber was a large swamp. One of the screamers approached the swamp and dipped one of its legs into the water. Given the high temperature, this was likely a place where Galagons rested. Given the environmental characteristics, the presence of a swamp is unnatural. Confirmation required. Commence internal investigation of the swamp. Confirmed. The S-model screamers of B and C teams entered the swamp. Outside, the commander-level units waited in the passage connected to the chamber, prepared to retreat if necessary while the lower-ranking units bought them time. Multiple life signs detected. No movement detected. It was a strange situation. Life signs were detected, yet there was no movement. All other sensors produced contradictory results. As the search continued, one unit noticed an unnatural ripple across the surface of the water. Periodic waves were emanating from the center of the swamp, disturbing the surface. The screamers quickly spread out, forming a perimeter. The unit that had detected the anomaly slowly approached the source of the waves. Pushing through the sticky, black liquid, it saw the tip of a black rock. The surface around the rock rippled faintly, as if the waves were originating from it. Submersion needed for confirmation. Permission granted. The screamer plunged its head deep into the murky swamp water. Thanks to its aquatic gene modifications, it could easily assess the situation beneath the surface. What lay before it wasn't so much a rock as it was a massive, tumor-like growth. Several long, thin tendrils extended from the rock-like object. The tendrils were long enough to reach under the feet of the screamers encircling the rock. As the screamer examined the tendrils, it turned its gaze to the rock itself. The moment it saw the rock, it realized the truth. The rock, or rather, the thing that only looked like a rock, was watching it with a wide-open eye. Special targ. The screamer tried to report the enemy, but it was too late. A massive arm shot out from beneath the swamp and grabbed it. The screamer's organic components shriveled and shattered upon contact with the creature's hand. Having absorbed the screamer's energy, the creature, Special Target, began to rise slowly from the swamp. Chapter 237. Combat in space survival is typically loud and chaotic. In the sky, enormous ships hundreds of meters long rain down energy cannons, while on the ground, soldiers in exosuits clash with various monstrous creatures. Some players prefer commanding from the flagship, while others dive directly into the battlefield. Regardless of which faction a player belongs to, war feels like a dazzling, noisy festival. It's actually quite unusual for stealth and surprise attacks to be encouraged, as is the case in the later stages with the Amorph. Speaking of which, there is one more entity that fights as silently as the Amorph. The Screamers. Controlled by machines, they only speak when necessary, producing little to no other sounds. The screams of wounded soldiers, the cries of those longing to return home, common noises on the battlefield, are entirely absent. Perhaps that's why the place we're fighting, a swamp lake within a cliff, was eerily quiet. Despite the dozens of screamers moving to attack me, there was no sound. Only the rippling water disturbed the silence. Dormant beneath my thick carapace, my invasive tendrils suddenly awoke. The targets were the screamers positioned in the rear. My tendrils, with 6 limbs fully extended, swam through the swamp like serpents, seizing them one by one. The screamers closest to me drew their weapons. Since I last saw them, they had undergone further modifications, giving them even more unique appearances. Some had multiple legs, others had sagging flesh that made them look obese, and some even had extra eyes. When I encountered PS-111, it had integrated 5 different species into its form and used materials like blood, reaver claws and Galagon blades for its reconstruction. The screamers that had ventured into the dragon's nest were similar. They had augmented themselves by incorporating the remnants of fallen screamers into their bodies. They seem far more unstable than PS-111. Though they had many genes applied, they were still a mess compared to PS-111, which had completely restructured its shattered body. Their designs were poor, and their efficiency seemed lacking. At this rate, their energy consumption would be excessively high, and maintaining their various configurations would be challenging. They were clearly designed for short-term combat, with everything invested in killing me. But they still can't defeat me. Even now, my friends were picking off screamers throughout the nest. Some would lie in wait behind mucus-covered walls, launching ambushes at the right moment, while others would attack from behind when the screamers were distracted by the smog created by the smog tower. When the enemies died, the black mucus would absorb their corpses and transfer the nutrients to me, thanks to the nest's human sacrifice trait. And then there's the blood reaver. A screamer lunged at me, climbing onto my back and beginning its assault. It seemed to have integrated the genes of a Hellsite hornet, as several of its legs were armed with scythe-like claws. Each time its claws flashed, deep gouges appeared in my carapace, and long gashes were torn into my invasive tendrils. While it attacked, other screamers charged in. Normally, I would have dodged, but there was no need for that now. I reached into the swamp floor and pulled out a combat arm, grabbing the approaching screamer. As the leeching hand effect activated, the flesh on its body rapidly withered, turning into a high-energy source almost instantly. All that remained was its durable metallic skeleton. When one screamer died, another was revived. The life force I absorbed from the screamer spread throughout my body. My broken carapace and bleeding wounds healed as if they had never been injured. The screamer on my back hesitated. Its AI likely couldn't comprehend what was happening. I unfurled my coiled tail. When combined with my snake-like lower body, my massive tail extended over 20 meters, rising from the water's surface. The screamer perched on my carapace tried to flee upon seeing the tail. After all its attacks, I had no intention of letting it escape. I brought down the pincer at the end of my tail, smashing the screamer against the hardest part of my body, the carapace around my head. Its metal skeleton shattered completely. But that wasn't the end. I swung my tail wide, left and right. The screamers approaching me quickly retreated, but not all of them escaped. Some were struck by the tail and flung into the chamber's ceiling or walls, while others were caught by my pincers. I could have split them in two, but I didn't. With my mouth wide open, I pulled my tail, along with the trapped screamers, towards me. They thrashed, realizing what I was about to do, but their resistance was futile. The screamers flailed their limbs to avoid being eaten. 3 synthetic claws dug into my maw, and flames erupted from their bodies, scorching my palate. The pain was brief. As wounds formed, the nest healed my body. Once I neutralized their resistance, I clamped my jaws shut like a snake, crushing their upper bodies and heads, which flowed down my throat. Tasteless. It was a horrible mix, like eating peppermint candy, orange juice, and yolken all at once. Perhaps I had been eating too much delicious food, like galagons, recently, and my tolerance for bad tastes had worsened. Without savoring it, I swallowed and tossed the remains, their headless, upper bodies, into the swamp. The screamers that had retreated unleashed a barrage of various projectiles at me. Cluster bombs, high-velocity impact rounds, conventional weapons of the Star Union, and energy-based weapons like psychic-powered energy bolts, all aimed to inflict damage and pain. But that was all they could do. Even if they destroyed my body, I wouldn't die. The amorph nestled above the nest was fully prepared, stronger weapons were necessary to take it down. I braced myself as I absorbed the enemy's attack and prepared my next weapon. The tentacles that had been hanging limp below my neck began to twitch and rise. Thanks to the heart I took from the black dragon, my psychic power quickly recharges. In an instant, the tentacles of the fully energized creature spewed flames. The dragon's breath devours everything. Even the metal skeletons that gleam with a purplish shine as the light reflects off them, and the rough breaths escaping from the mouths buried in flesh. The thieves who invaded the dragon's lair try to flee as they watch their comrades burn in the fire. From behind them, I spread my winged arms wide. Like Nyx, the goddess of the night from Slavic mythology, unfurling her cloak, my wings filled the space above the swampy lake. /N. Nyx is a Greek goddess, but here it is referred as Slavic goddess as per author. No one can leave here without my permission. No one. Outside the nest, PS5 was aware that the battle was turning against them. Contact had been lost with the 4 squads, totaling 98 screamers, that had entered the cave on the opposite cliff. Although it could simply be a communication failure, the AI embedded in its head did not think so. The reason was the last messages left by the screamers before communication ceased. An environment, enemy, and all other factors being completely unpredictable is unusual. It wasn't hard to guess what would happen to those who had fallen into the trap. Most of them likely wouldn't return. Of the 209 units sent to attack the Galagon's nest, nearly all had been decimated. Now, only it and another PS model beside it remained. If it were not a machine, it would have fled long ago, but it waited for orders from Pura 11. And soon, the awaited response came. Prepare to retreat. Confirmed. The information gathered before the communication with the infiltrating force was cut off was transmitted. They had lost nearly 200 units, but it wasn't a complete loss. They had acquired some information about Special Target A, and with that, they could formulate a new strategy. After cutting communication with Pura 11, they left the cliff. The half-biological, half-mechanical entities with multiple metal legs moved through the forest. Even though they had been away from the cliff for some time, the forest was still dark. Of course, for those who could switch between various modes of vision, this level of darkness meant nothing. Switching to infrared detection, they moved quickly, their randomly positioned legs scuttling. While running toward the ice canyon where Pura 11 was stationed, PS5 heard a sound. The faint crack of frozen earth. Such a sound occurs when the native creatures of this planet move. The 2 screamers stopped and scanned their surroundings. Naturally, they had to. There were no wild animals in this forest. Before attacking the Galagon's nest, they had wiped out the creatures living in the forest. In other words, that footstep belonged to something that didn't exist in this forest before. PS5 remained on alert while releasing a small reconnaissance drone. The drone began to move between the trees, initiating its search. As PS5 synced with the drone to check for any moving targets, the drone's view suddenly shook. When the sync was forcibly cut, PS5 deployed its implanted biological weapons, and the screamer beside it prepared for battle. They moved to the location where the drone had been destroyed. Not far away, they found the wrecked drone. Strangely, the drone's remains were on a tree rather than the icy ground. The camera used for thermal detection had been pierced by a metal spear that had flown from somewhere. PS5 replayed the last thing it saw before the view was cut off. Before the drone froze, a beam of light had flown toward it. After confirming where the spear had come from, it ended the replay. PS5's gaze shifted toward the location from which the beam, no, the golden metal spear, had been launched. Confirmation needed. Will confirm. The screamer beside it crawled toward the location from which the spear had been thrown. Meanwhile, PS5 switched to a detection system that could sense physical projectiles in advance. Since arriving here, it had never seen a creature using such primitive weapons. This planet, with its extremely volatile climate, is not a suitable place for civilization to develop. Whoever it is, it doesn't matter, capturing it will be enough. Even if the creature doesn't want to talk, its genes will hold the answers. Within seconds, it switched to the detection system and looked ahead. The screamer that had moved forward to investigate the source of the spear was visible. Or rather, the screamer whose head and body had been separated was visible. And before it stood a massive quadrupedal wild beast. Its head, based on a raptor from Earth, was adorned with sharp horns, and its body resembled a large feline predator. Its fur was dark gold with black ripples. It crushed its comrade's head with a massive forepaw. Even in the dark forest, its amber eyes, glowing brightly, fixated on PS5. A creature it had never seen anywhere on this planet. PS5 knew what this creature was. 77% match with Special Target C. Special Target C, though not as high priority as Special Target A, is also a target for elimination. PS5 chose to retreat rather than fight the beast. There was no guarantee it could kill the creature alone, and above all, reporting this to Pura 11 was the priority. Quickly retreating from the location, PS5 reactivated communication with Pura 11. As its many legs moved swiftly, it prepared to transmit the recently gathered information to the commanding officer. Perhaps it was because of this. PS5 neglected to remember that it had switched its detection system to detect physical projectiles. It only realized its mistake when it saw a purple thermal beam coming from the trees on the opposite side, but by then, it was already too late. I thought it was odd that the nest suddenly disappeared, and as expected, Mother of the Sky did not return to the dragon's nest with Nell Germa. Since Hamort's injuries were not fully healed, she remained at the nest created by the Amorph. After resting for another day, Hamort was almost fully recovered. She planned to head to the dragon's nest in another 2 days, but suddenly the nest stopped expanding and began to wither. She understood what it meant for the Amorph's nest to decay. N/O/Bell/B/JN.C//Ohm. Having fought the Amorph several times, she knew there were limitations to the nest's installation. Once the limit of how many nests can be maintained is exceeded, the most recently installed nest is automatically deactivated. Seeing the black swamp in the small cave dry up, she realized that the Amorph had established a new nest. She also understood that this was related to the Amorph's current crisis. The Amorph acts as if it was born to be one, not a human. Such a being wouldn't set up nests indiscriminately without reason. And there is only one place nearby where the Amorph could set up nests up to its limit. Daughter of the Meteor, is it safe? I believe it will be fine if it's that creature. The Amorph. If it's a blackkin, it will surely try to protect it. I trust you. Mother of the Sky also knew how powerful the Amorph's nest could be. She had experienced a similar situation in the game where her clan was destroyed. It seems to be remnants moving in the opposite direction from the dragon's nest. Returning to her griffin form, Mother of the Sky approached the screamer that had lost half its body. The fact that Hamort's wings were not fully healed turned out to be advantageous as it allowed her to fly slowly. As a result, she was able to spot moving screamers beneath the trees while heading to the nest. She crushed the wriggling head of the completely wrecked screamer with her forepaw. Given the risk of screamers activating their self-destruct system if only their heads remained, it was dangerous to leave them alive. They might escape or cause damage by activating their incineration systems. These creatures must have their heads crushed. Otherwise, they will self-destruct, so be cautious. Understood. Mother of the Sky, having warned Hamort, retrieved the golden spear from the tree. Grasping the spear with her beak, she mounted Hamort. I understand, but there might be creatures fleeing like this one. Please go a bit slower. Understood. Even as they flew through the branches on top of Hamort, her amber eyes remained focused on the forest below. Chapter 238. Defense impossible. Incineration Proto. I opened my jaws wide and bit down hard on the screamer's head. Its body, having lost its command center, collapsed helplessly. It's over. It took quite a while to deal with all of them since there were so many. Around me were the remains of partially melted metal skeletons. Black mucus was diligently dissolving them, converting the debris into nutrients. Should I check the other side? It was unlikely, but the others might have missed something by accident. I swallowed the screamer head in my mouth and linked with the nest. My senses spread throughout the cave, detecting movements over the black mucus. Many creatures were moving around, but there were no screamers among them. No Galagons died in battle. We had no losses. It was a small relief, especially given how many Galagons had already died. 2 of the victorious ones are coming this way. I disconnected from the link and waited as number 26 and PS 111 appeared from behind the passage. We taught those bad friends who hurt the little ones a lesson. ZZZ, well done. Honestly, I was a bit worried that number 26 might hesitate, but it was unnecessary. After seeing Adha mourn the loss of the Galagons, it showed no mercy to the screamers. Whenever it confronted them, the energy supplied through sacrifices surged explosively. PS 111 also performed well. Maybe it was because it had fought alongside Adha and the Galagons multiple times. They took turns acting as bait, effectively confusing the enemy. Where is the little one? Adha went to protect the Galagon hatchlings. As it said, Adha didn't return but went to check on the hidden hatchlings. Thanks to my link with the nest, I knew the blue Galagons were safe, but Adha didn't have that reassurance. She must be worried, given how many Galagons have died. Even though we won without any losses, the fight was more of a setback than a gain. Many had been killed by the enemy before I returned. Let's leave her be for now. ZZZZZZZZZZ, Adha needs time. Okay. Number 26, having lost its kin to Megacorp, didn't say anything more. It probably understood that Adha needed time too. To change the subject and confirm something important, I called PS 111. How did the task I assigned you go? I rebooted some of the S-model screamer systems as you ordered. It proudly presented the result of its work. What's this? When I first met PS 111, it mentioned that if the opponent was a lower-tier S model, it could be controlled to some extent. At that time, it added that physical contact was required. I didn't expect everything to go smoothly, but I also didn't anticipate this outcome. Only the heads are left. Its 3 hooked claws each held a screamer's head. Beneath the torn necks dangled spines with small chips attached. The sight of it holding the heads, with spines loosely hanging down, reminded me of a finishing move from an old fighting game. When I didn't say anything, it seemed to realize this wasn't what I had in mind. It added a word of explanation, almost as if making an excuse. The resistance was too strong. This was the only way to subdue them. Can these heads regenerate their bodies like you? These heads cannot. Why? The S models lack self-repair capabilities. Additionally, their life support functions rely entirely on me. They will perish as soon as they are disconnected. Only after hearing this did I notice that the ends of the 3 spines were all connected to metal hoses extending from its back. I'll just have to settle for the information this time. This wasn't what I had originally planned. I had intended to assemble a legion of S models if it succeeded in hacking the screamers. It's disappointing, but there's still a chance. If the opponent is unable to resist, perhaps I can leave their bodies intact and take control. For instance, right after they've been produced and are awaiting final adjustments. If you seize control of the production systems, you may achieve your desired outcome. PS 111 voiced a thought similar to mine. Since we were on the topic, I decided to ask it the most critical question. Where are their ships and Pira 11? I'll check. It closed its eyes to access the information. The screamer heads it was holding began to tremble. GGGGRR. Ark. GRRR. The screamer heads, with their eyes rolled back, emitted sounds resembling beats and mechanical noises. It would have been a terrifying sight for any normal human, but there were no ordinary people here. Our friend is acting strange. What's happening? Z. It's searching for important memories. Memories. How does it search for those? Number 26 seemed intrigued by PS-111's actions. While PS-111 was extracting information, I made small talk with number 26. Watching memories looks fun. Does it? Yeah. It's like becoming just like your friend. It's a bit different, though. Is it different? It was surprising to see it show interest in something like this, especially after being so down about Adha. Who would have thought it would be curious about understanding or reading another being's thoughts? Maybe it thinks there's something to learn from its kind. Number 26 had considered PS-111 one of its own from the moment they first met. So, it might believe that if PS-111 could do something, it could too. Reading memories, huh? There's a psychic ability that allows one to read actions from traces left by another. But as far as I knew, sea demons didn't have that trait in the game. Then again, who knows? Given Oddgrad's case, it's hard to just rely on the game's standards. Maybe number 26 could acquire abilities I'm unaware of. Though if that were the case, it would have happened by now. Looking at it, this seemed more like curiosity than gaining a new power. It wanted to learn something its kind didn't know. Learning is always a good thing. Sea demons are incredibly powerful creatures, but in this vast universe, there are countless threats to its life. If it continues to follow me, it'll face beings far more terrifying than itself. To survive these foes, or to hunt them, it must keep learning. Feeling a sense of pride, I patted it. It expressed its happiness at my touch but didn't stop asking questions. While we talked, PS-111, having extracted all the information from the screamers, opened its eyes. The location has been confirmed. Pira 11 and the ship are in the same place. That's good. Now that we know the enemy's location, all that's left is to strike. But first, we need to bring Mother of the Sky and Hamort. The dragon's nest was vast, so I spread the nest to its limits. The previously set nests automatically decayed. Mother of the Sky had gone to the previous nest with Hamort to heal her. She would understand what it meant for the nest to disappear. She's fought me enough times to know. Maybe she's already on her way here by now. I'll hear the details later. Understood. Friend, I have a question. Ask me anything. Leaving the two who were deep in conversation, I headed toward the cave entrance. As I walked along the long, dark passage, my steps sticky with mucus, I began to see the entrance. The light streaming in from outside suddenly dimmed. Someone was blocking the entrance. So, seeing you out here means it's already over. The Black Kin, what about the daughter of the meteor and /o/bell/b/in.c//ohm? Speak of the devil, and she shall appear. It seemed I no longer needed to go searching for them. Minus an unknown planet, with no name or recorded route leading to it. Due to the clouds that covered the atmosphere, it appeared as a dull, ashen gray from the outside. But lately, this place had become suddenly chaotic, disturbed by the sudden arrival of external invaders. The clouds parted, revealing the planet's surface, and the impact of massive energy clashes rippled across the entire world. The artificially generated energy storm affected not just the inner regions of the planet but its outer layers as well. Captain Min-suk, the atmosphere has stabilized. Good. Report to me as soon as the communication lines and satellite radar are restored. Yes, sir. In the command room of Si-hyun Eugen's flagship, the crew was busy moving about. Recent weather anomalies had disrupted communication with the planet's interior, and restoring it was proving to be a daunting task. Amid the bustling bridge, acting Captain Min-suk Eugen stared at the holographic map of the planet with a grim expression. A red marker hovered over a particular spot on the spherical map, representing the planet. That was the location where Min-suk's master, Si-hyun Eugen, had led the exploration team. Damn it. Min-suk was growing increasingly displeased with the actions of Si-hyun Eugen's clone. The master he served had dedicated her life to ensuring the righteousness of their family. Her goal was to bring Akira Eugen, who had usurped the head of the family, to justice and to ensure that the rightful bloodline would govern. That was Si-hyun Eugen's purpose, and the purpose of everyone here. But this clone of Si-hyun Eugen seemed more interested in other things than in the grand objective. And that wasn't all. The clone was straying from the path Si-hyun Yujin was supposed to walk. Instead of meeting with key figures of the family to secure alliances, she was wasting time on these pointless pursuits. Currently, a civil war was raging within the megacorp between Noble Capital T and C and Prime Capital Egerton. CEO Akira was preoccupied with mediating the conflict, making this the perfect opportunity to rapidly expand their influence without interference. Si-hyun Yujin was undoubtedly aware of this but had chosen to come to this remote planet instead of heading to Earth. I could understand if the goal was to secure credits, but when the satellite radar was functioning, Min-suk saw it. This planet was a treasure trove of resources. It was rich in nova metal, which was highly prized by cults, and teeming with creatures carrying rare genes. Properly exploited, these resources could bring Si-hyun Yujin's faction an enormous amount of credits. But instead of focusing on earning credits from the planet, Si-hyun Yujin was obsessed with some unheard-of relic. Ancient relics. Ridiculous. Most of the megacorp's noble capital factions owned multiple planets. The Yujin family was continually exploring planets to expand their genetic pool. Because of this, Min-suk knew well that there were no secrets left in this universe. The secret weapons of a fallen empire, ancient civilization relics, treasures powered by super scientific principles, none of these things exist. They're all just concepts made up to deceive the gullible masses. It was common knowledge among the megacorp elite, but Si-hyun Yujin was ignoring it. A defective product. Though it was a deeply blasphemous thought, Min-suk was half convinced. The clone that had gone down in pursuit of a worthless goal was defective. I'll have to take action when she returns. Without Si-hyun Yujin's approval, creating a new clone wasn't possible. But excluding her would be an even graver issue. After all, everyone here had gathered to follow the only rightful bloodline of Jungwoo Yujin. There was only one option left. I'll have to use what she left behind. Before Si-hyun Yujin died, she left something behind, worried about possible defects in her clone. Using it might be the only way to guide the clone down the right path. Min-suk's cold gaze remained fixed on the red marker hovering above the holographic map. Chapter 239. I explained the situation to the late arriving Mother of the Sky and Hamort. I told them that there was a screamer attack and that many of the Galagons had been killed. As soon as Hamort heard this, she rushed off to where Adha was. Number 26, who had been with us just moments before, followed her to the other side of the cave. I suspected it, and it turned out to be true. Mother of the Sky also mourned the loss of the Galagons. Her amber eyes, now in her griffin form, were filled with sorrow. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz, it seems like it will need time. Indeed. She closed her eyes, forcing herself to calm down. When she opened them again, her gaze was cold with anger. So, where exactly is this place? Below the canyon located beyond the ice plains. There's only one ice plain around here. You mean the place where we captured the ice horror and Jason? Yes, that's correct. If you move in the opposite direction from the forest, you can verify it. It said that Pura 11 and its ship were in the exact opposite direction of this place, where the forest and mountain range are located. The canyon, huh? One of the apex candidates I considered for Adha's training was a creature that primarily inhabited the ice canyon. However, since it was a flightless creature, I chose the Hellside Hornet instead for her flight training. I had planned to retrieve its genetic essence later, but I didn't expect things to turn out like this. If it's the canyon, could it be a gigantarium? ZZZ, possibly. The gigantarium, like the ice horror, only inhabits regions with extremely low temperatures. It's a creature that looks like a mix of an elephant, a bear, and a gorilla. The screamers have already eliminated the gigantarium. Really? It doesn't seem like they integrated it. The gigantarium, true to its name as the giant beast, is massive and incredibly strong. Its trunk and tusks, resembling those of a mammoth, are particularly striking. Among the screamers I've seen, none had the biological characteristics of the gigantarium. In response to my doubt, PS-111 nodded. The flesh and genes of the gigantarium were entirely used in the restoration of Pura 11. That means Pura 11 is a screamer too, right? At this point, that seems to be the case. At this point. Does that mean it wasn't before? Pura 11 suffered fatal damage after arriving on this planet and was in a dormant state. During the repair process, its damaged body was replaced with resources available on the planet. The resources it mentioned likely refer to the biological tissue of various creatures like the gigantarium. From what it says, It sounds like Pura 11 was originally an android and became partially Screamer. Given the image of Screamers from Star Union, Pura 11 definitely wouldn't be a cyborg. A cyborg would rather choose death than become a Screamer. On the other hand, an android, which prioritizes efficiency, wouldn't mind changing its body. An android leading an army of mutant Screamers. Even in the game, there was an android that led a Screamer unit. A High Commissioner, perhaps. Officially, Screamers are not meant for combat. Their stated purpose is to reform criminal cyborg offenders, essentially serving as an educational tool. Since they are a unit meant to enlighten others to follow the Star Union's will, one of the High Commissioners from the Supreme Authority, the Machine Council, would oversee them. Following this logic, Pura 11 is likely a member of the Machine Council. And the mutant Screamers are new weapons. Not just ordinary weapons, but biological weapons incorporating the latest technology from enemy nations. Considering their importance, it makes sense that someone at the level of a High Commissioner would be in charge. What caused it to malfunction? Being a lower model, that information wasn't stored in its memory unit. If it hadn't malfunctioned, it would have been easier to figure out. Mother of the Sky glanced at me, likely because of my Gremlin Moss trait. Gremlin Moss is a trait that disables mechanical devices that come into contact with my body. With this trait, it wouldn't be difficult to subdue a High Commissioner. It didn't work on the mutant Screamers, so it probably won't work on the High Commissioner either. Since it modified its body with biological tissue, the paralyzing sound waves of the faceless worm might be more effective. It's a double-edged sword. How many genes are embedded in its body? Most of the genes of native creatures found on this planet have been implanted. They must have also used genes from the support ship. Which ones did they use? That information can only be accessed with Pura 11's authority. However, it is certain that unidentified genes have been added in addition to those applied to the PS model. To summarize, Pura 11 is a monster based on PS 111, with additional genes from the apexes on this planet and unidentified organisms. Of course, unless it's an outspecies or the amorph, synthesizing genes infinitely, especially within a short time, isn't an easy task. There would likely be significant side effects, or it might not be able to fully utilize the implanted genes. But it's probably at least on par with a megacorp's shadow. Moreover, it has absorbed many of the apex genes from this planet, much like I have. It's uncertain how skilled Pura 11 is in combat, but if we're unlucky, it could show prowess similar to that of high-ranking players on the leaderboard. To know for sure, we'll just have to ask it directly. Indeed, I will do my best to gather useful information. Our next opponent is the leader of the mutant Screamers, Pura 11. So, when do you plan to go? Now that we know its condition and location, we need to decide on the timing of the attack. In reality, we don't have much time. We don't know when the support ship it has might produce new soldiers. I could go right now without much trouble. The cooldown for the symbol of the hunt is already over, and my body is overflowing with energy thanks to the massive amount energy I've absorbed. But while I'm fine, the others aren't. The Galagon's injuries haven't fully healed yet, and Adha still needs more time to collect herself. Mother of the Sky hasn't had a proper rest either, with taking care of Hamort, fighting, and then rushing here over the past few days. ZZZZZZZZ, let's move tomorrow at midday. Now that one battle is over, we decided to take some time to rest. ZZZZZZZZZZ, take a look around the nest while you rest. Are you telling me to explore the Amorph's nest? Do you know how many times I've died in a nest? It's been so long that I don't remember well, but it was around 57 times. Still, I didn't bother mentioning that. She looked at me with a mix of disbelief and exasperation before letting out a small sigh. Alright. Since this was the Galagon's nest, there might be something interesting here. If we find rare metals, I can upgrade. I will join you. After sending them off, I headed toward the entrance. In my haste to return to the nest, I had left the bodies of the white Galagons outside. I couldn't just abandon the valuable spoils I obtained from fighting Odgrad. There's also something I want to test. I retraced my steps, gathering all the bodies over the course of half a day. I hadn't consumed them because I wanted to experiment to see if the Galagons could grow stronger from them. Just as Adha grew, other white Galagons might also evolve into black dragons by consuming the corpses of white Galagons. By the time I returned with the bodies, night had fallen. The area, already dim due to the overcast sky, was now even darker with the night's shadow. As I crossed the cliff with the bodies, I noticed someone on the opposite side. A Galagon with wings glowing bright red even in the darkness, and a body as white as snow, Adha. Next to her was another white Galagon with a wounded wing. It was Adha's mother, Hamort. From what I know, Adha has mixed feelings toward the mother who abandoned her. But right now, the two didn't seem to be on bad terms. Hamort was wrapping one of her wings around Adha. Did they reconcile? Upon closer inspection, there was a small pink figure between them. Number 26 had extended two thin tendrils, connecting with the tendrils of the two Galagons. Is it mediating between them? Or perhaps it was comforting the two in their grief. Whatever the case, it seemed that number 26 had positively influenced their relationship. I considered approaching them but decided against it. The pain of losing family or kin isn't something I can console. Someone like number 26, who has experienced something similar, or Mother of the Sky, could offer better advice. Certainly better than someone like me, who ran away rather than confronting reality. Pointless thoughts. Shaking my head, I turned and entered the cave.n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. A canyon of ice, hundreds of meters deep. A place where light should never reach, where only darkness should reign. Yet, the bottom of the canyon now glowed bright red. Pura 11. Record verification. Complete. In the red glow, hoses of flesh and metal writhed. Calling them hoses didn't quite capture their essence. Ordinary hoses aren't casually tens of meters long, with a minimum thickness of several meters. The sight of multiple such hoses in motion resembled a group of ice horrors coiling together. With every movement of the massive body, the red light flickered. Pura 11. Conclusion reached. Utilizing the S and PS models for the mission is disadvantageous. Alternative methods are necessary for mission completion. Pura 11. Proposing an alternative method. Reinvestigation of the supervolcano is required. Pura 11. Denied. Threats have not yet been eliminated. Further damage is unnecessary. The investigation will be assigned to the Screamers. The immense entity, or rather Pura 11, continued its self-dialogue as if it had multiple minds. Pura 11. Proposing an alternative method. Based on the information relayed by the S and PS models, bodily restructuring is required for the direct construction of Special Target A. Of the remaining Screamers, it would be beneficial to absorb all but 10 S models and 2 PS models for exploratory purposes. The auxiliary brain for gene manipulation will utilize the ship's AI. As the red light intensified, the colossal hoses began to move with agility. Soon, sparks flew from beneath the canyon with the sound of welding. Even as the red light deepened, there was no scream from the Screamers. Chapter 240. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was a pink jellyfish. It was number 26, who had grown to a size of 10 meters, asleep while leaning against me. Beside number 26 were Adha and Mother of the Sky. Not long ago, Mother of the Sky in her Griffon form had been much larger than Adha, but that was no longer the case. After evolving into a white Galagon, Adha had grown to be similar in size to Mother of the Sky, and now, with the power of the red Galagon, Adha was even longer, especially when considering her wings. It seems her heart has softened. I expected her to be with the blue Galagons, but surprisingly, she was here. It seems the comfort from number 26 and Hamort was quite effective. As I lay there, simply observing, I noticed white and green islands submerged in a black swamp. These were the white and green Galagons that were still recovering from their injuries. Fortunately, most of their wounds had healed. However, their horns, which took longer to regenerate, remained broken for some. While I was checking on their conditions, a light flickered from the passage connected to the chamber. What was that? Though it was brief, having seen it, I couldn't just ignore it. Carefully, I got up. Normally, number 26 would have woken up at the slightest movement from me, but it must have been extremely tired because it didn't stir. I moved cautiously to avoid waking it and stepped outside the swamp. Speaking of which, where is PS 111? It was nowhere to be seen inside the chamber. Heading towards the passage where the light had flashed, I found PS 111. It was in the middle of sinking with a screamer head. When it noticed me, it stopped what it was doing and turned to face me. You're awake. Just like number 26, PS 111 also matched its actions to number 26's daily rhythm. When number 26 slept, it would partially power down its system, and when number 26 ate, it would replenish its energy. It was rare for it to act on its own initiative unless given orders. Did you find something? Yes. I had some memory data that needed verification. Is it about Pura 11? No, I found a few interesting memory fragments. Despite its usual lack of expression, something about it seemed different today. Perhaps it was a hint of emotion. After a brief silence, it spoke again. During the process of being digested by the ice horror, most of my memory data was lost. It's impossible for me to know what memories or thoughts my original body held. Were you trying to see if others were in a similar situation? Yes. PS-111's body had been severely damaged by the ice horror's attack. When number 26 found it, only its head remained. It had managed to cram the minimum life support functions into its small head to stay alive. In the process, its organic parts and the AI that controlled its actions formed a symbiotic structure. It seems the original memories and personality were lost in the process. To be precise, it would be more accurate to say that the two merged. After receiving energy from number 26, its body had been restored to a state where machine and organism achieved perfect balance. In other words, it had become a new entity where biological tissue and machinery were seamlessly integrated. Its identity must be very different from what it once was. In a way, the intelligence and mechanical components of the screamer that originally made up PS-111 had died, leaving this new entity in front of me as something entirely different. But that's probably not what it wants to hear. Did you find what you were looking for? Shaking its head, it replied, the memory data analysis revealed an 89% similarity. They were all resigned to their existence and wished for their life support systems to stop. Not surprising. The conditions it faced were vastly different from those of a regular screamer. Cyborgs or intelligent beings forcibly turned into screamers must endure constant torment until they are pardoned by the Machine Council. They can't control their bodies as they wish, but they still experience pain and sensations fully. Even when hit by artillery fire on the battlefield, they must charge forward, and even when their bodies are scorched by energy rounds, they must continue fighting. It's an environment that would break even the strongest of wills. As PS-111 said, it would be rare to find anything other than a plea for death. After analyzing the data, I'm left with new doubts. Was I like them, or was I something different? I can't make a definitive judgment. Even if the newly developed mutant screamer differed from older models, the basic framework remained the same. Before its transformation, PS-111 was probably similar to the other mutant screamers. However, I couldn't just tell it what I was thinking. Well, I think you were different. What makes you think so? If you truly wanted to die, you wouldn't have gone through the trouble of modifying your body inside the ice horror. And even after number 26 saved you, you've had plenty of opportunities to end it all. Doesn't that make you different? It's likely that its transformation was a desperate measure taken by the AI to preserve life, but I couldn't be 100% sure. Out of all the creatures that had participated in the mission with it, PS-111 was the only one that had stubbornly survived. I added one more thing to PS-111. You're a special entity. That much is certain. And I meant it. Depending on how you look at it, PS-111 had reached a stage of freedom far beyond the others. It blinked the camera that replaced its eyes and fell silent. After a brief pause, it spoke again. I will take that into consideration. With that, the conversation ended. PS-111 fiddled with the screamer's head for a moment before quietly entering sleep mode. Memories, huh? When you think about it, the players who arrived in this dystopian world are in a situation similar to PS-111. Humans who were living their own lives suddenly had their consciousnesses thrown into this world. I, too, am essentially human, not an amorph. The burns I suffered as a child, the conflicts with my parents, and the hobbies I started as an escape, all of these memories from my human life still define who I am, even in this amorph body. What happens to these memories if I return home? If they remain intact, it might be difficult to adjust back to reality. After all, I would be going back to being human after existing as a creature that devoured people. But that's not something to worry about just yet. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep while lying beside PS-111, lost in these thoughts. When I awoke to a sense of movement around me, it was already morning. The first thing I saw was number 26. Good morning, big one. I patted it as it greeted me cheerfully. It glowed and sent out waves of contentment. N/O/bell/B/in.C//om. The little ones are all up. They're calling for you. ZZZZZZ, wait a moment. Instead of heading directly into the chamber, I stopped by the entrance of the cave. After gathering what I needed near the uncovered entrance, I returned to the chamber. As I entered the vast space covered in a swamp, I found the Galagons and the little ones waiting for me. Big Elder, we're ready, all set. The Galagons who had recovered from their injuries radiated intense anger. Adha was also determined, burning with the desire for revenge. Good. There were 4 white Galagons and 9 green Galagons who had barely survived while defending the nest from the screamers. Including Ham-Ort, there were 14 in total. A few more green Galagons had remained unscathed by staying in the nest, but I didn't plan to bring them along. Pira 11 is an enemy similar to me. It absorbs energy by consuming living beings. Bringing too many won't necessarily be beneficial. Instead, I plan to bring a small but elite group of 14 Galagons and the little ones. But before that, there was something I needed to do before setting off. What I had brought from the entrance of the nest was none other than the corpses of white Galagons. 4 corpses obtained from defeating Odgrad. Judging by Adha's case, white Galagons need to consume other white Galagons to evolve. I wasn't sure, so I intended to experiment right here. I wanted to see if these corpses could evolve the 4 white Galagons. Who should I give them to? I was definitely going to give them to Ham-Ort and Nel Germa. Both had extensive combat experience and were highly skilled. If the experiment went well and they both became black Galagons, it would be a significant advantage in the upcoming battle. Shah-Bulmog wouldn't be a bad choice either. That lean male Galagon was the first to rebel against Odgrad after he lost his ring. He seemed intelligent, making him a suitable candidate for the experiment. As for the last one, after some deliberation, I chose the largest Galagon among them. Ham-Ort, Nel Germa, Shah-Belma and Jerkapsha. I presented the 4 white Galagon corpses I had obtained the previous day in front of them. Loyal by nature, Nel Germa didn't hesitate to plunge its tentacles into the corpse. Shah-Bulmog and Jerkapsha followed, absorbing the remaining fluids from the corpse. Finally, Ham-Ort seemed to hesitate. ZZZ, drink. It gazed at the corpse I had offered, then turned its head to look at Adha. Adha tilted her head, puzzled by Ham-Ort's stare. After a moment, Ham-Ort seemed to make up its mind and immediately plunged its tentacles into the corpse. Now, let's see what happens. I hoped that all of them would evolve into black Galagons, but things might not go that smoothly. At least one of them should evolve into a black Galagon. Quite some time had passed since they began their experimental meal. The corpses I had brought started to shrivel up, drying out like mummies. Despite consuming nearly all of it, there were no visible signs of change. Could it be a fail, huh? Just then, I noticed something on Ham-Ort's horn. The surface of the horn had started to turn black, as if ink had spread across it. The black waves quickly engulfed Ham-Ort's horn, spreading rapidly over its head and down its neck. Realizing the changes in its body, Ham-Ort unfurled its wings and wrapped them around itself. From beneath the thick wings, the sounds of rapid growth echoed. It's similar to Adha. I checked the other Galagons to see if they were undergoing any changes as well. Nel Germa and Shah-Belma had some unfamiliar black spots behind their necks and on parts of their bodies, but there were no signs that these would spread like they did with Ham-Ort. So, only Ham-Ort is evolving. Out of the 4, only Ham-Ort showed signs of growth. Despite devouring the entire white Galagon corpse, the other 3 didn't transform. Could it be the condition of the corpses? Or is it related to age? To my knowledge, Ham-Ort was the oldest among the surviving Galagons. It was relatively young before, but after the battles with Odgrad and the Screamers, which decimated most of their numbers, Ham-Ort had become the eldest. Maybe both the condition of the corpses and age played a role. It was disappointing, but there was nothing more I could do. All that was left was to wait for Ham-Ort to complete its growth. When Adha transformed into a white Galagon, it took about 30 minutes to an hour. Unlike a morse, it didn't take that long. An hour passed. Ham-Ort remained still, its wings tightly wrapped around its body. The pure white wings had vanished, replaced by smooth, obsidian-like wings that now covered it. At some point, the sounds of transformation ceased. The growth process was complete. The new black Galagon spread its winged mantle wide. As the newly born black dragon emerged, all the Galagons in the vicinity lowered their heads in deference. Ham-Ort now sported 2 additional horns on its head. The original horns hadn't fully regenerated, resulting in a somewhat unbalanced appearance. The horns and body had taken on the black sheen of obsidian, and the creature's increased size added to its imposing presence. Though still smaller than the aged Ograd, Hamort now stretched at least 30 meters from head to tail, a considerable figure nonetheless. Hamort surveyed its new form briefly before bowing slightly to Adha and me. As I looked at the fully evolved creature, I thought to myself, everything is ready.